What is up, guys? Lone Wolf here. Today I'm going to be going into the 2400 plus solo shuffle guide on the H Pally. I feel like her class is pretty unrepresented, but at the same time very OP in solo shuffle. There's some great players that have put out some good guides. I just feel like they don't quite go into enough detail as to what they're doing and why. So today that's what we're going to be doing. We're going to cover everything down to the stats, gems, why I trade cooldowns, positioning, as much stuff as we can. I've been playing a lot of solo shuffle. I'll give you my 2 cents. And with no further ado, let's go get Legend, boys. Jumping into races, the best race you can play for Pally without a doubt will be Human. The get out of the stun free card, freeing up that second trinket slot, is invaluable. It will be the best race you can play without a doubt. That would be S tier. Following close behind that in the A tier will be Dark Iron. It's pretty close to Human. It's pretty much a cleanse on yourself, and then you get an intellect boost. It's a really high intellect boost too. I think it's like 800, so it's nothing to undermine. So Dark Iron is really good, arguably almost as good as Human. Followed behind Dark Iron will be the regular dwarf. It's the same racial, you just don't get that intellect boost, so you take 10% reduced damage instead. I would say dwarf is like B+, and then Dry, that heals really bad. I'm gonna say it's like a D. It's like a D tier racial for Paladin, and Light Forged is completely ass. But yeah, that's the race tier for Alliance. Going into the Horde side, there's an argument to be made. Blood Elf versus Tauren. Blood Elf the Purge I personally like. I think it's really nice. Our class doesn't have a Purge, so it's really nice to get like a bop off or something every now and then. And then Tauren, the War Stomp it's okay. I personally don't like how War Stomp DRs with Hodge, so I personally avoid that. But yeah, you could go Tauren if you want. I think that'll just be a preference playstyle thing. And Zandalari is pretty meme. You get regenerated, which is like 100% heal over, I think it's like 6 seconds or something. But yeah, I see a lot of Pallies, they'll bubble and then they'll pop that. It's pretty meme. You could get Massive Spell, it could get interrupted. It's hard, it's kind of hard to use. Honestly, at the end of the day, just pick the race that you think looks the coolest. That's what I do. My main Pally is a dwarf, and my alt Pally is a Dark Iron dwarf. Racial shouldn't matter too much, but if you're trying to min-max, then go Human. If you're trying to just have fun, then just pick the race that you think has the coolest cosmetics, pretty much. And that's going to wrap it up for races. Let's talk stats. I'm going to explain the most common way people build Holy Pally right now, and I'm going to explain my prio for Holy Pally. So what most people do is they'll prioritize haste and then crit. The reason they do this is because haste reduces the global cooldown. It makes it a little quicker. And then it also reduces the cooldown of Holy Shock, of Judgment, of Crusader Strike. So with a haste build, since the GCD is quicker and the cooldown of your main heals is lesser, you could get more Holy Shocks, you could get more Judgments out. It's more of a steady stream of these abilities during Wings, which is very reliable, by the way. And that is why people are building haste and then crit on their Pallies. Traditionally, in my prio for Pally, it's always been crit, and crit has always been very synergetic with the Paladin kit. So when I looked on the ladder and I saw all these people building haste, I was honestly kind of shocked. And the difference between the crit and haste is that crit is a very chunky, big healing feeling compared to that steady Holy Shock, that steady Judgment. It's big healing, don't get me wrong, but crit, the heals are just like, they're big, man. They're massive. And I just feel like nothing feels better than when Uther himself gives you that Wings proc and you throw that Judgment and it hits someone for 80k, you almost kill them, and then you full heal your team from like 10%. I'm talking everyone at 10%, you full heal them all the way back up to 100%. It's just, I just think it's really fun. I've always loved Holy Pally for that big chunky healing factor. So I would say that is the difference between the two stat weights. And I've asked some of the higher rated Pallies, and the response I get is, yeah, the GCD it's faster. The cooldown on Holy Shock, the cooldown on Judgment, Crusader Strike, it's a lot faster. But I still see some of those high rated Pallies in the 2.9 and the 2.8 and the 2.7. Some of those guys are still running crit, so it's definitely not bad. That's why I say it's more of a personal style choice. I like to do crit, but honestly, the most common thing right now is haste crit. So the decision is yours to make, and we are going to be moving on. All right, going into the gems and enchant section of this guide, haste pallies are going to pick up Energized Just Emerald. That's 70 haste and 33 versatility in those gem sockets, and crit pallies are going to get the Radiant Malachite. It's going to be 70 verse and 33 critical strike in those gem sockets. Moving on, we're going to do Homebound Speed for the back. We're going to do Reserve of Intellect for the chest. We're going to do the wrist, 200 speed. We're going to do the legs, Temporal Spell Thread. It's going to be the intellect on the legs with a little bit of mana on the side. We're going to do Plain Runner's Breeze on the feet. And let me tell you, when I first enchanted Homebound Speed, the Wrist of Speed, and the Plain Runner's Breeze, I noticed the increase in movement immediately on my Paladin. I was schmoovin', man. Like, these enchants are crazy. You will notice a difference on the speed anyway, so... With that aside, haste pallies are going to get haste on their rings, and crit pallies are going to do the versatility on the rings. And rounding this out, both pallies will be getting Sophic Devotion on the weapon. Getting that main intellect stat is absolutely insane. So yeah, pick up Sophic Devotion. The price of this has dropped considerably. I got a 2-star Sophic Devotion for like 7k. The 3-star is still very expensive at 30k, so you don't have to opt into that. But yeah, pick up Sophic Devotion to round this out, and we're going to move on to the next segment of the guide. So this is the build, and the good news is not a whole lot really changes in between games. Sometimes you'll take Rep over Blinding Light. We also have a loose point with Blessing of Summer over in the Holy Tree, and every now and then we'll change our PvP talents, but I'll explain those situations when we get to those parts of the guide. Starting off with the Paladin points, we go straight into Lay on Hands. This is a really good early game cooldown. The reason I say that is because as the game drags on to the 3-4 minute mark and dampening is at 40-50%, this button is absolutely worthless. So it's very good to use in the early game. It's a very nice clutch heal. Not much more to say on Lay on Hands other than use it early, and it's a good early game heal. Blessing of Freedom will get you out of roots and snares. This feels really good to press on melee DPS. They're going to love you for it. It has good synergy with Blessed Hands, so you'll have 2 charges of these. This also synergizes very well with Divine Steed, pretty much our only mobility cooldown here. You could freedom yourself and Divine Steed away from danger. Absolutely insane. And we'll have 2 charges of Divine Steed with Cavalier. Hammer of Wrath feels really good to press. It's a holy power generator, and it does big damage on people. It also has really good synergy with Zealot's Paragon. So I encourage you to press Hammer of Wrath every time it's on cooldown. It just feels really good to press, and you love doing big damn, you know what I'm saying? Going straight into Auras of the Resolute, you're going to stay on Devotion Aura all your games. I never use Concentration Aura. In Shadowlands, I'd use it against Priests and Locks, but I just see so much value in Aura Mastery with Devotion Aura. I like to Aura Mastery the first go. That's 15% damage reduction. Every now and then I'll sack the kill target on my team, so that person will take 45% damage reduction in the opener. A little trick, a little tip I should say here is you could actually wall the sack damage. That way, because Blessing of Sack, this dot hits really hard, and Paladins are really susceptible to swaps. So if you negate the damage that this does by a little bit, it deters your opponent from wanting to swap to you because your health will be fuller. Just make sure your health is full and your position is good, and it deters those swaps. So yeah, that's my say on Aura of the Resolute and why we go Devotion Aura. This is called Short Hodge. It just, every time you spend Holy Power, it reduces the cooldown of your Hammer of Justice. Having that 35-second, 45-second cooldown on Hammer of Justice is absolutely amazing. Who doesn't like a 6-second stun behind a pillar? This, you use Hodge for all sorts of things, and having it on a shorter cooldown is absolutely amazing. I went over Divine Steed here. There's the argument of Blinding Light versus Rep. And I have to say, if you're new to Pally, just play Blinding Light. That way you could protect yourself. You could peel for yourself. If a melee chases you behind a pillar and they don't have a trinket, you could Hodge them and you could Blinding Light them out. That's 12 seconds that they can't play the game, and that's 12 seconds of your team getting ahead. And it absolutely wins or loses games sometimes. So Blinding Light's really good to peel for yourself. In more advanced situations, when appropriate, you could cross the map. You could extend the chain on the enemy healer. So let's say there's like a fear, and then let's say like maybe your rogue Shadow Step kidneys or something. I don't know what's going on here in this hypothetical situation. And let's say you blind out of that for some reason because your rogue won't. This is really good to extend the chain. If you're new, just use it to peel for yourself. One little trick I wanted to bring up with Blinding Light is you could actually blind through Warrior Spell Reflect, and you could blind through Grounding Totem. So you could rush into a Shaman with Divine Steed. you could act like you're in a Hajim. So when he throws down grounding, you cast Blinding Light. He sits the full 6-second blind, and at the very end of that chain, you Hodge him out, and you get a nice 12-second CC on those shamans. So it's a nice little trick I just wanted to let you guys know about. I would say rep is more for advanced players. I use it to punish cocky evokers without Shroud. You could get Dis Priest with this. It's really hard to get a Holy Priest with Holy Ward. It's really hard to get Shamans with this. Monks are really hard to get with this sometimes because they'll roll away from it. But there are plenty of times you could win a game with a nice rep. I would say as you learn how to play 3v3 arenas, this will become more apparent to you. I just encourage all new Pallies to start with Blinding Light. We're going to go with Improved Cleanse here. This is amazing against Warlocks, DKs, Rogues. They're all over the frickin' solo shuffle matches right now. So you're going to cleanse all those additional diseases and poisons off. It's absolutely amazing. It's just a good talent to pick. Greater Judgment causes the target to take 30% increased damage from your next Crusader Strike or Holy Shock. This is absolutely amazing when you're getting trained by melee DPS. So you'll Big Judge a melee, and then you don't want to get caught casting. So this additional damage from Crusader Strike, it helps a lot to just top you back up when you're getting trained by melee. So it's not like an amazing talent, but like the value's there. Rebuke is absolutely amazing. I've been waiting for this talent to come back for a long time. It always sucked when we couldn't kick people, but I've won games with this talent. I've had mages cast poly right in my face, I kick it. I've had shamans try to hex me right in my face, I kick it. I've divine steeded towards druids trying to clone me, kicking it. Before the 4-second lockout ends, I'll Hodge them and then I'll blind them. So they're out of commission for 16 seconds for trying to disrespectfully CC me so close to me. So Rebuke is absolutely mandatory. It feels so good to land those interrupts on DPS that don't know any better. So Rebuke is absolutely amazing. I'm so happy this talent is back. Avenging Wrath is an iconic Paladin ability. It increases your damage and healing by 20% for 25 seconds. It's iconic, man. This is just... Wings needs no introduction. If you don't know what Wings does, I feel sorry for you. Why are you playing Paladin? Why are you playing Paladin? Come on, man. Anyways, going to Holy Aegis here. Armor and critical strike chance increased by 4%. Crit strike is amazing for us. Armor doesn't hurt, but that 4% crit is pretty good, so we're going to take it. Blessing of Sacrifice. I have a lot to say about this button. The outplay potential with Blessing of Sacrifice is absolutely insane. Yes, it's a wall. You could put this on your DH. Let's say there's a melee cleave and they're going your DH. Yeah, you could throw it on your DH and he takes reduced damage, but the damage you receive also breaks you out of CC. So let's say you're fighting Warrior Mage and he comes out of Invis in the backline, so there's no way for your DPS to kick the poly and you can't avoid the poly. So let's say you throw sack on one of your DPS. So when they damage that DPS, they'll actually break you out of poly and put you on the DR for poly. And if it's the first go, you only gave them Blessing of Sacrifice. You didn't even have to trinket, you didn't have to bubble. I've broken so many CCs with this. You could get yourself out of polys, you could get yourself out of traps, you could get yourself out of fears, you could get yourself out of Evoker Sleepwalk, you could get yourself out of Rogue Blind. There have been a handful of games I've won by pre-sacking a DPS, anticipating a Rogue Blind, and within seconds I sack, they throw a blind. And it's just such a big outplay button. Giving sack to avoid CC in the first go, that's invaluable, and you will win a ton of games by sacking on the go to avoid getting CC'd by pesky mages, pesky hunters. Sometimes you'll see a hunter run up to you and you'll pre-sack, because hunters will like to stun you early and then trap you. Even at 2400, boys, I have hunters, I can see them walk up to me. I pre-sack a DPS, they'll stun me, sack is still rolling, and then they trap me on top of that. I don't know if they don't see it, but they trap me on top of that, and then sack immediately busts me out. So yeah, sack is absolutely amazing, and the outplay potential is there. Moving on to Blessing of Protection, this is an immunity that does cause forbearance. It's like a mini bubble, but it only works with physical abilities and damage. So this removes mortal strikes, this removes physical stuns, this removes bleeds, all that good stuff. If you're fighting a mage, they can spell steal it, and people can still damage through this. So like if you're fighting a rogue, they could still envenom you through Blessing of Protection because that does nature damage. Frost DKs can still obliterate you through Blessing of Protection because they do frost damage during Pillars of Frost. They consume their proc, it turns their obliterate into frost damage, so be very careful of that. LA Shamans could get a lot of damage off on you during Blessing of Protection, but this is all in all a very, very good spell. It, like I said, it can get spell stolen, it can get purged off. Sometimes I'll throw out a bop to just get a big Mortal Strike off. It's so hard to heal through Mortal Strike, guys, especially Sharpened Blade. If it's like 2.5, 3 minutes in a game and I have a bop available, I'm just gonna I'll just bop just to get Mortal Strike off. I don't even care if it gets purged, but it lets me heal through that throughput. I also trade bops very early. If my Aura Mastery Hand of Sack doesn't do the job, I will straight up send a bop on the first go if I have to. It doesn't happen very often, but I will send a bop on the first go should I need to do that. Moving on, we have Seal of Reprisal. It just buffs your Crusader Strike damage by 10%. Not a whole lot to say. Gives you a little bit extra healing on Crusader Strike when melee wings are up. We're going to go straight into Unbreakable Spirit. This reduces the cooldown of your bubble, your wall, and your lay on hands by 30%. So it's really nice to put Divine Shield on a 3.5 minute cooldown. Sometimes you'll get... No, you only get one use of this, but you will get multiple uses of Divine Protection, which is absolutely amazing. In real 3v3 arena matches, you will get multiple uses of Divine Shield from this. Sometimes you cannot get more than one use of this from solo shuffle. Sadly, I was thinking in those 3v3 situations, sometimes you will get two uses of Divine Shield from that. So Unbreakable Spirit is pretty nice. Sacrifice of the Just is absolutely amazing, putting Sack on a 1 minute cooldown. The value's there. You just have to take this talent. It's absolutely mandatory. After Image, we use this as a chance to proc melee wings. I don't really put too much thought into the After Image heal. Like I said, it's just a chance to proc melee wings, which is the star of the show, this build. So don't put too much thought into After Image. Aspiration of Divinity gives you more intellect whenever you Crusader Strike. More intellect means more healing during melee wings. So this is just a nice little buff when we are casting Crusader Strike. Divine Purpose is a core piece of this build. It synergizes very well with Awakening. So your Holy Power abilities have a 15% chance to make your next Holy Power ability free and deal 15% increased healing or damage. And then that synergizes well with Awakening. Word of Glory and Light of Dawn have a 15% chance to grant you Avenging Wrath for 8 seconds. I've actually had Word of Glory proc Word of Glory. That proc procs Word of Glory. That proc procs again. And then I use that proc, and that procs wings. So I get like 3 free Word of Glories, and then I get free wings for 6 seconds, and then I throw a big damn Judge, and then I throw a Hammer of Wrath, and that extends the duration of my wings by 1 second. So there's a lot of synergy with Divine Purpose and Awakening in this build. You absolutely have to take Divine Purpose, and you never take Holy Avenger, ever. Going into Hallowed Ground, this is a pretty useless talent. It's a means to just get to the bottom of the tree, but it increases your consecration damage by 10%. It's there. What can I say? Moving on to Seal of the Crusader, your attacks have a chance to cause your target to take 6% increased holy damage for 5 seconds. If they're taking more damage from Judgment, you're going to be doing more healing. More damage is more pressure. This is a great talent. Seal of Alacrity, haste increased by 4%. Arguably, haste is the best stat for Holy Paladins. I'll get into stat weight when we get to that part of the video, but the alternative to this is Seal of Might. During Avenging Wrath, your mastery is increased by 4%. Newsflash, Paladin mastery is complete doo-doo, so we're just going straight into Seal of Alacrity, arguably the best stat for H-Pallies. I'm going to explain Of Dusk and Dawn. It's a really important part of this build. So essentially, when you reach 5 Holy Power, you get this buff called Blessing of Dawn. It increases your damage and healing done by 5% for 20 seconds. And when you spend it all, you get this buff called Blessing of Dusk, which reduces the damage you take by 4% for 20 seconds. Honestly, Blessing of Dusk doesn't matter, but your uptime on Blessing of Dawn is very important. So what I like to do at the start of an arena is I'll bestow Faith, Holy Shock myself, and if I absolutely have to, I'll Divine Toll just to get the Blessing of Dawn rolling on myself. Healing on H-Pally it's kind of like a little mini game. You want to reach 5 Holy Power as fast as you can to get Blessing of Dawn. and then you want to refill back up to 5 holy power as often as you can. That way Blessing of Dawn doesn't fall off. So the higher you go on the ladder, the higher your uptime on Blessing of Dawn should be. In this build, we do not go Seal of Order. It increases the effects of Blessing and Dawn and Dusk on yourself. We can't go into this just because we don't want to lose Sanctified Wrath or Zealot's Paragon. Going into Sanctified Wrath, what this does is it reduces the cooldown of Holy Shock while your wings is up, which is obviously fantastic. So we're going to pick Sanctified Wrath over Seraphim, and then Zealot's Paragon increases the damage of Hammer of Wrath and Judgment by 10%. And anytime you throw those abilities out, it's going to extend the duration of your wings by 0.5 seconds or a global. So this extends the duration of your melee wings when you pop it. It also extends the duration of your melee wings when you proc it. So you'll get a 6-second proc of melee wings, and then you throw a Judgment, you throw a Hammer of Wrath, and that extends it by 1 second. So it's absolutely amazing synergy, and it feels absolutely amazing to get those procs. And that will wrap up the Paladin points section of this video. We're going to jump into the Holy Tree now, starting off with Holy Shock. This is one of our main healing spells. It generates 1 holy power, has a 30% chance, additional chance to crit, I should say. And when it does crit, we get a buff called Infusion of Light, which reduces the mana cost of Flash of Light by 30%. And when you heal with Holy Light, that will grant 1 additional holy power. So that is Holy Shock for you. We're going to go down to Holy Light and grab this. You won't use this spell very often, but you will use it. So let's say you're fighting Ret Paladin and Shadow Priest and you're not at jeopardy of being kicked. You could cast a couple of these out when the damage is moderate, but then jump straight back into melee wings healing when the damage ramps up. So Holy Light's really good. Oops, we will be using that. Like I said, not very often. We're going to grab Light of Dawn. We're not really going to use this ever. We just have to take it. So there it is. We're going to go straight into Bestow Faith. This is one of our main heals. It generates a holy power, and it's like a little time bomb, and when it explodes, it heals for the full duration. So it's really nice to get one of these off before you get CC'd, and like I said, it's a really nice source of holy power for us. This is your wall, Divine Protection. Reduces all damage you take by 20% for 8 seconds. Absolutely amazing. Ideally, when people are hitting you with cooldowns, you'll use this, but it's such a low cooldown that even when their cooldowns are not up, like let's say after the go, they're still hitting you and this comes off cooldown, you might as well use it anyways. It does you a disservice not to use this based on its low cooldown. So yeah, ideally use this when cooldowns are up, but if you're getting trained, just pop it off CD. We're going to go Divine Insight because it increases our main heal, Holy Shock healing, and damage by 5% versus Holy Light and Flash of Light healing. Holy Shock wins every time. That's why we take Divine Insight here. This is a Flash of Light buff, so whenever you heal into Beacon of Light, your Flash of Light does 15% more healing. It's a lot better than Holy Light healing 5 additional targets. Yeah, so Moment of Compassion. We're going to take Moment of Compassion, given the choice between these two. I kind of explained some synergies with Aura Mastery, but Aura Mastery with Devotion Aura is really, really good, and this is a really good early game cooldown to avoid, to try not to use bops and stuff. So this is a very good cooldown to use in the early stages. I see some pallies, they never press Aura Mastery. You guys are killing me. Come on, man. Just press your button. Press Aura Mastery. It's really, really good. I used to be guilty myself, so don't feel bad. Going into Divine Favor, unfortunately, this talent is a shell of its former self just because it used to grant kick immunity, but now it doesn't. So you could still get kicked on Flash of Light, which is unfortunate. Holy Paladins don't cast that often, so this does help you sneak in a quick Flash of Light when that moment does arise. And I'll give you an example of when maybe you would cast Divine Favor. So let's say the Arena Gates drop. What we're going to do is Bestow Faith, Holy Shock. We're going to Toll for Dawn. We're going to spin, Wings, Judgment, Hammer of Wrath, Crusader Strike, spin proc, spin. We're going to Shock. I could have spent again. Judgment, Bestow Faith, Shock, Hammer. We have Dawn, spend, Shock, Crusader Strike. We're Dawn, spend, Hammer, Shock, Hammer, Bestow Faith, Crusader Strike for Dawn, spend, Shock, Judgment, Hammer for Dawn, spend, Shock, Crusader Strike, Bestow Faith, Shock for Dawn, spend, spin proc. So now I need to cast. So I would do Divine, and then I would do a quick Flash of Light, and I'm back in it again with a Holy Shock port with Blessing of Dawn, and the show starts all over again. So we would spend Crusader, Shock, Crusader for Dawn, spend, proc, and I'm right back in it. So Holy Paladins honestly don't have to cast that much, and having Divine Favor for the rare times you do need to cast is very nice. So that is Divine Favor in a nutshell for you. Looking at Shining Savior, Word of Glory, and Light of Dawn, healing increased by 5%. That's pretty self-explanatory. Oops. Imbued Infusions. Consuming Infusion of Light reduces the cooldown of Holy Shock by 1 second. It's really cool since Holy Shock has a 30% increased chance to crit. It does crit very often. So there's a crit right there. We're going to use our Infusion of Light. Look at this cooldown. Boom, 1 second off cooldown. It didn't crit that time, but yeah, Holy Shock crits all the time. So consuming Infusion of Light is really good, and this reduces the cooldown of Holy Shock, which is amazing. Echoing Blessings. Blessing of Freedom increases the movement speed by 15%, and Blessing of Sack and Blessing of Protection reduce damage your target takes by 15%, and this effect lingers 8 seconds after those effects end. So this is absolutely amazing. Even if Bop gets stolen off, they still take damage reduction. Absolutely amazing. Tower of Radiance. Casting Flash of Light or Holy Light on your beacons grants you 1 holy power. So you will be healing into your beacons quite often, and this is why, because you get holy power for healing off into your beacons when you do need to cast, and this also Moment of Compassion, this will help you heal into your beacons even more. And then Saved by the Light also contributes to the beacons. So the beacons are a very big part of your Holy Pally play. Radiant Onslaught. Crusader Strike now has 2 charges, so we go from 1 to 2. That's twice as much value. But yeah, we picked Radiant Onslaught. We're going to Save by the Light. So this is very important, and this is like a mini CD. So the way that you decide who you're going to beacon, it's always safe to Beacon of Faith yourself. This is the lesser beacon. So what I like to do is I'll Beacon of Faith myself at the start of a match, just because Paladins die very easy, and then I will beacon the person I think they're going to train. At some point in the match, if they're not hitting me at all, I'll just put it on my second DPS. Some games I will actually put Faith and Beacon of Light on both of my DPS. You just have to feel if you think they're gonna go you. If they have a rogue, put a beacon on yourself, please. If they have like a melee, if they have like a DK that's gonna pull you in, put a beacon on yourself. That way you could avoid the whole beacon situation when you get pulled in by the DK, when the rogue mysteriously goes you in the opener. Wasting a global to move beacon around loses you games. So rule of thumb, beacon yourself with Faith at the start, put Beacon of Light on somebody that you think is going to get trained. If they have like a Shadow Priest and a Shaman, you could just put beacons on your DPS and then 40 yard them. So yeah, going back to Save by the Light, the reason you put the beacon on yourself is this mini cooldown will save you entirely. So let's say a DK, let's say I have my beacon on me. Let's say a DK is doing his slappy hands. A cool little trick here is if you're blanket silenced by a priest or a DK, you could still cast Judgment and Crusader Strike. So what I like to do is I'll have beacon on myself. I know I'm going to get gripped in. So the first time I peek, before I peek, I will pop wings. I'll peek, I'll go for a Holy Shock, and then they'll pull me in. I have beacon on myself. I'm getting the absolute shit beat out of me, so I pop my wall. I'm getting the shit beat out of me. I'm stunned. I get out of the stun. They silence me. I turn around, heal myself, and if they're chasing me, I Crusader Strike. Boom, boom. But the point of this is, this beacon, they probably took me down to 20%, but at 30%, that beacon procced. So by the time that the stun ends and they blanket silence me and my wings are already up, the beacon gave me enough time. It bided me enough time so that I could full heal myself on the way out. I didn't have to give them trinket. I didn't have to give them bubble. Sometimes you do have to give them bubble, but a lot of the times it saves you from situations like that. A simple mini cooldown like Saved by the Light, it's very, very valuable, especially when you put it on yourself as a paladin that can die very easily. So that's my little spin-off on Saved by the Light, and I love it. Moving on, we have Commanding Light. Beacon of Light transfers an additional 20% amount healed. So Beacon of Light is your main beacon. I just put that on the guy that's getting trained. They'll get the most value out of that. Going into Second Sunrise, Light of Dawn has a 20% chance to create a second Cone of Light immediately after the first one's hit. So like I said, we never cast Light of Dawn. We spec into this just because it has a good synergy with Empyrean Legacy. After your Judgment empowers your next Word of Glory, it automatically activates Light of Dawn with a 25% increased effectiveness. This happens every 30 seconds, so you'll get a little debuff up here, but pretty much when you judge somebody, you get this debuff. Your next Word of Glory will shit out a Light of Dawn here, like that. And the whole point of that is, Word of Glory has a chance to proc wings. Word of Glory has a chance to proc itself, which can proc wings. Light of Dawn has a chance to proc wings. And then let's say that Light of Dawn itself has a 20% chance to proc another Light of Dawn, and that proc Light of Dawn has a chance to proc melee wings. So the question is, why are we speccing into this? All for the chance to get a proc of melee wings. So that's why we have the synergy between Empyrean Legacy and Second Sunrise, even though we never cast Light of Dawn. It just has that chance to proc wings. Super important. Divine Glimpse. Holy Shock has a 15% increased chance to crit, which is amazing because we get infused by the light procs. When we use those, don't forget, Holy Shock's cooldown goes down by 1 second. Absolutely amazing. The star of the show, Avenging Crusader, the melee wing Paladin, makes our Judgment heal our whole team absolutely insane. Makes Crusader Strike heal our whole team. They cool down 30% faster. Absolutely amazing. This is what the entire build is centered around, Avenging Crusader. We're picking it up. You always grab Beacon of Faith simply because it has really good synergy with Saved by the Light, and it helps you heal threes very, very efficiently. Beacon of Faith is absolutely amazing. Pick it up. Divine Toll is a holy power generator. It's not as OP as it used to be in Shadowlands. I used to use Divine Toll as an emergency heal in Shadowlands, but now I simply use Divine Toll to get 5 holy powers. If I'm in a 3's team, I get 5, just so I can get Blessing of Dawn. Do not be afraid to just use this off rip if you need to get Blessing of Dawn rolling. So Divine Toll is really, really good as a holy power generator. And then as this was happening, we spec into Divine Resonance. This helps you get 3 holy power over the course of 15 seconds. It also applies a Glimmer of Light. So it's a little bit of it's a little heal, you could say. But yeah, so we'll go Divine Resonance for that reason. We're going into Awakening, which is another core piece of this build. It synergizes very well with Divine Purpose, like I said earlier. Your Word of Glory procs itself, it procs itself, it procs itself, and then it procs Awakening. Absolutely amazing. You get the melee wings, and then when you throw Hammer of Wrath, when you throw Judgment, it syncs very well with Zealot's Paragon, extending the duration of those procs. So, like I said earlier, you get a 6-second wing proc, you extend that to 7 seconds with a cast of Hammer of Wrath and a cast of Judgment. Absolutely amazing. Talking about Glimmer of Light, the synergy with Divine Resonance, this is just a little extra damage and a little extra healing. Nothing too amazing, but yeah, that's Glimmer of Light. Be careful because this can break CC. I've seen this break CC, so maybe not polys and stuff. I have cast Divine Toll and I have broken polys, which I felt like a complete noob. So be careful throwing your Divine Toll around when there's CC out. Just be very wary of that. That's why we pick Glimmer of Light. We have Empyrean Legacy. I explained this talent a little bit already, but it shits out that Light of Dawn, which will proc the Avenging Crusader sometimes. And then we have Blessing of Summer. This is a point you could move around depending on if you want to run this or not. You can opt into Breaking Dawn if you want to increase the range of your Light of Dawn to 40%, so that way when you do proc Empyrean Legacy, it actually heals your team. So there's that. Or you could spend this point, if you're fighting like DKs or melee cleaves you don't want to be anywhere near, you could go Long Arm of the Law, and that helps you max distance while you're wogging, while you're holy shocking, while you're sending your heals. You still have to run in to do your Judgment, I believe, so be wary of that. You can use your Blessing of Summer to either switch to Rule of Law or to Breaking Dawn. I like Blessing of Summer. It's a small little damage buff on our go. It turns into Blessing of Winter, which is a buff that when someone attacks somebody with a spell or an attack, like an auto attack or like a Mortal Strike or something, it leaves a movement reduction buff, an attack speed reduction buff, and does a little bit of damage. And then that turns into Summer, Winter. In between those two, there's Blessing of Fall. It's a 30% damage, 30% cooldown reduction that lasts 30 seconds. It's really nice. And then the last one is Blessing of Spring, which is a healing. When you put it on someone, they take increased healing and also deal additional healing. So I'll put it on myself to deal additional healing. And then it's really nice if I need to heal myself. I also get, I also receive additional healing. So ideally you put it on yourself, but if a target's getting absolutely slammed, you can throw it on them and then throw a big Judgment Hammer and just top them instantly. It's absolutely amazing. And that is going to wrap up the Holy Tree section of this video. Moving on to the PvP talent section of this video, one talent we have to take that's absolutely mandatory is Aura of Reckoning. Pretty much after your team receives 50 crits, you get this buff called Reckoning, and it makes your next judgment deal 200% increased damage, and it procs Avenging Wrath. So guys, these judgments are no joke. I've hit 80k judgments with this thing. I've killed countless people with just this buff alone, and then that 80k translate into healing. So that 80k hammer, it's gonna full top your team. It's absolute madness. It feels really, really good healing into fire mages, into Ellie shamans, into Havoc demon hunters. It just any into warriors, anything that crits often. It just feels so good to heal into, simply because you're always proccing Reckoning. You're always hitting those big hammers, those big heals, dude. I'll show you guys a clip where I swear I played this game where I had a Reckoning proc, I threw it, and then before my 6-second wing proc from Reckoning ended, I had another Reckoning proc and I threw it again, and my wings was up almost the entire match. It's just wild, and it's really fun, and I'm really happy that Reckoning is a part of the Melee Wings Pally build. Here's an example of the Reckoning stacks and how fast they could ramp up when you're fighting against like Ellies, when you're fighting against Havocs. Check this out. I'm at 13 stacks. My wings is still up right now. So we go in, my team starts getting hit. I'm getting wings. I think I proc wings too, but like, look how fast those stacks are. I proc wings, so I throw hammer to get the most value out of my proc. Check that out. I bounce from like 20 up to 45 stacks. So I throw judgment because my wings is up. I have a Reckoning proc. My wings ends. I still have that Reckoning proc right there. And then the moment hammer comes off cooldown, I send it to have my wings. Boom, wings. Check this out. Within 3 seconds, I'm already up to 20, 25 stacks. It's absolutely insane. And then the game rages on. I'm pretty sure I get another judgment proc. Like, look how fast this is. So I get up to 50, and then I send the hammer. And that's just an example of how powerful Aura of Reckoning is. Another really safe choice is the Vengeance Aura. Whenever someone experiences a loss of control effect on their character, you get 6% additional crit. This can stack up to 2 times, so it's really powerful. It's a passive, so you don't really have to think about it, which is nice. And then Blessed Hands. This is really good when there's at least 1 melee on the team. It gives you 2 bops and 2 freedoms. Out of all of our talents, the ones that you could change are Vengeance Aura and Blessed Hands. Fighting melee cleaves, you could swap out Vengeance Aura for precog because you'll have more opportunities to proc this. And melee cleaves traditionally don't have as much CC as wizards, so you lose value on Vengeance Aura. So maybe when you're fighting a melee cleave, your build will look like Blessed Hands, precog, and Aura of Reckoning. You lose value on Blessed Hands when you fight pure wizards because they could go through bop. So you'll take maybe Cleanse the Weak, depending if they have a lock or not. Cleanse the Weak will dispel all debuffs on anybody in your aura, so it'll dispel your whole team most of the time. This is really good into rogues and DKs because we have that improved synergy with improved cleanse here. And it's really good into Shadow Priests, Ellies. But like I said, just be careful when you're you're cleansing. I wouldn't run this against a warlock at all, actually, because if you triple dispel UA, you can kill yourself from 95% health. The other day, I was playing a game with my brother-in-law, and I was joking around. I was like, "Hey, should I run Cleanse the Weak into this warlock?" And he's like, "Don't do it, man. You're gonna die." And halfway through the game, I accidentally dispelled triple UA, and yeah, I died. So that was pretty funny. A game against casters would look something like this: Vengeance Aura, Cleanse the Weak, Aura of Reckoning. If you're fighting a DK and a Priest, you could run Cleanse the Weak and Blessed Hands just to have that physical immunity against that DK, and also dispel his dots. DK Ellie, Rogue Priest. This is a really good setup against those comps. But for pure wizards, we'd probably just run Cleanse the Weak, Vengeance Aura, and Aura of Reckoning. Some Pallies will choose Ultimate Sacrifice and Blessed Hands, so they'll sack somebody, they'll take 100% of the damage that target would take, and then they'll just Divine Shield it off. So really high in the dampening, like 40, 50, 60%, you could sack somebody, Divine Shield it off, and then use that 8 seconds of being indestructible to go and push in for a win. It's really cheesy, and I don't ever see it in high elo, so play Ultimate Sacrifice at your own risk. A cookie cutter build that I would use would probably look like Blessed Hands, Vengeance Aura, and Aura of Reckoning, and that is going to be the PvP talent section of this video. I'm going to go for the add-ons I use in Arena. I don't really use that many, to be honest, but the ones I do use are Ability Team Tracker, Big debuffs, Fly Plate buffs, Omnibar, and S Arena. Starting with Ability Team Tracker, I really like this add-on because it lets me see my teammates' defensives and offensives. So if I get polyed, I could see that my priest has dispersion up, and I could sit the poly and let him use. But I could also see if he doesn't have dispersion and I get polyed, I could use my trinket and use my cooldowns to save him. On the flip side of that, with the offensives, I could see when my teammates' offensives are coming off cooldown, and I could position myself in a way to assist my team with their offensive cooldown. So Ability Team Tracker is really nice for that. I like debuffs to notice cooldowns on my frames, like Deathmark. It's really nice. I also use this to look at my focus target CC, so I could see a sap going, and then I could run over there and get a Hodge, and it lets me see the CC chain in very big, bold font. So I really like big debuffs for that. Fly plate buffs is very informative. I'm just going to show you an example of what this does. This is an add-on that will show you all the effects happening over the plate of an enemy. So it shows you, like, here's a debuff I put on him. It'll show you my Glimmer of Light. It'll show you when they say Hodge. It'll show you when Paladins pop wings. So this will be wings instead if they pop wings. It'll show you when Paladins wall. It'll show you all sorts of stuff. It's absolutely amazing. And if I had to get rid of all my add-ons and keep only one, I would keep Fly Plate buffs. It's too informative, and it's just hands down the best add-on I use for Arena. Absolutely love it. Going back to my add-ons, I use Omnibar to track kicks, enemy defensives, and enemy offensives. This helps me with my decision making in Arena. It's really good to keep track of enemy cooldowns. It's a big part of Arena, so that's why I use Omnibar for the kicks and tracking enemy offensives and defensives. And going into S Arena, this is a preference thing. I just like S Arena over Gladius. If you use Gladius, that is totally fine. I just recommend downloading one of those two so that you could get, more information on your screen to assist you in the arena. You have the trinkets, you have the DRs, you have them casting. It's absolutely amazing. So those are all the add-ons I use. I forgot to mention almost, I do use details. This one isn't crucial, but it lets you compare your damage and healing to people on the enemy team. So if you have a mirror comp and you see they did 5 million more damage than you, you could jump in here, you could compare the damage and break it down and be like, oh, this is why they did more damage. Maybe you could check if you sat CCs longer and your buffs and debuff uptime. So you can learn a lot about arenas through numbers alone, and details is very helpful with that. But those are the add-ons I use for my arenas, and I'm going to move on to the next segment of the guide. I also wanted to add real quickly, I do use weak auras. I only use one, and it's to track Reckoning procs. So this will go up to 50. It'll shine bright gold. I'll show you real quick. It'll shine bright gold at 50. You'll see it turns into the actual proc. So now you could throw your hammer. You could proc your wings. So it's very, very nice to keep keep track of this. It's very convenient to have it right here. So I'm going to leave a download for the weak art in the description of this video. I just wanted to add this on because I forgot in the original video. Okay, in this next segment, I'm going to talk about healing goals and trading cooldowns. I wrote a lot of stuff down just because I wanted to make sure I get this right. So I'm going to read a little bit off this prompt here. But the main healing goals to think about are making sure that Blessing of Dawn uptime is good, which will be this buff right here, and extending the wing procs you get with Hammer of Wrath and Judgment. So when you proc Awakening, you throw Hammer of Wrath and Judgment to get the most value out of your wing procs. Wing uptime is very important on the melee wing pally. So before the gates drop, I will Beacon of Faith myself, and I will Beacon of Light the person I think they are going to train. The reason I do this is because you generate more holy power and you heal more on a beaconed target. Also, Saved by the Light will grant a decent shield to your beacon targets should they fall below 30% HP. That is this talent right here. It gives you a 50k shield. It's pretty good. As the gates drop, I will Bestow Faith myself and Holy Shock myself to put these abilities on cooldown. It is very important to keep Bestow Faith and Holy Shock on cooldown because they are holy power generators, and Bestow Faith can heal your target and beacons when you get CC'd. To make a long story short, boys, basically you just want to make sure Bestow Faith and Holy Shock are on cooldown at all times. I cannot stress this enough. And when Wings is up, your main priority is putting Judgment on cooldown. It's going to be your big heal. And don't forget, if you get blanket silenced by a priest or a DK, you could still throw Judgment and you could still Crusader Strike during Wings to heal your team. So just a nice little tip to round that section out. Another big piece to playing Holy Paladin is properly trading cooldowns. Since we are a cooldown-based healer, I will go over some of the situations when it is appropriate to trade your cooldowns. If a team is initiating their first go, I'll pop Wings and trade Aura Mastery just to get it out of the way. And if the damage is really heavy, I'll sack as well. If the damage from sack is getting too much, I will just wall the sack dot to make sure my team stays ahead and to prevent swaps on myself. It's okay to trade bops into things like Avatar Spear Combo, Druid Berserker, and definitely Rogue Deathmark because that is borderline unhealable as it is. Solo Shuffle is a very fast-paced environment and it feels really bad to lose a game with big cooldowns still on the board. There is absolutely no reason to save your CDs if you keep losing games with them up. As you play more games, you will realize more opportune times to trade your bops, sacks, and divine shields. If you save your cooldowns, the first step to getting better on each pally will be using them on the first go to get used to prolonging the game and saving your team. If you're new to H Paladin, I encourage you to at least give up Aura Mastery on the first go to get into the habit of at least using it. Also, if you're new to H Paladin, giving up your bop on any big melee cooldowns, you'll see a rating increase simply by trading one bop for multiple enemy cooldowns. An example would be you're fighting Kitty Cleave and the warrior charges in, immediately Spear Avatar combos you, and the druid pops out with Incarn. If you just give one bop, they will lose 3 of their big cooldowns for that one cooldown that you traded. It helps you prevent instant deaths in the first go, and it helps you extend the game to get more experience playing a prolonged arena game. The too long didn't read on that, boys, is basically just give your cooldowns, get used to giving your cooldowns, and as you play more games, you will attune yourself to the most opportune times to give your cooldowns. You will learn the best times to give your cooldowns. When you first start, man, you're not going to know the best times to give your cooldowns, so just give them at the start. Like, if you save them for next game, that's the joke. You saving your cooldowns for next game, you'll run into wizards and you won't even get to use your bops. So there's that. Also, don't be too stingy with Divine Shield. If, let's say you're fighting a DK and a DH, and if they pull you in and they have Slappy Hands, they have Unholy Frenzy, they have A-Bomb out, they have Metamorphosis on the board, they have every single button in their arsenal pressed. Just give your Divine Shield and run away. You can give one cooldown for like 5 of their cooldowns, and after their go, you're safe. So people like to go Pally because they Divine Shield and they don't have anything. Well, now neither do you, so you should be able to heal through that. For example, like if a priest and a locker training you, they drop Infernal, the priest, he silences you, he has Siphon on you, he pops Void Eruption, maybe Void Ascension. Like, just give your bubble at high HP. That way you can turn around and just run away. Because if you wait around forever to give your bubble, let's say you wait to give bubble at like 5%, and then the priest masses you and they just kill you anyways, it just feels so bad. So that's just another quick tip on Divine Shield. And before I end this segment on cooldowns, Wings is the best healing cooldown in the game. I feel like I'm a firm believer in if your Wings is up, Nobody on your team should die unless dampening is so ridiculously high. So if wings is up, you should be fine. But that's going to wrap up the cooldown section of the guide. I'm going to briefly go over basic positioning in this segment. The two main goals of your positioning are to stay safe and heal at a 40-yard range. So you can stay safe by being on a pillar. It helps you line. You want to, let's say you're healing a melee cleave right here. You want to peek out, heal, go back. Peek out, heal, go back. Peek out, heal, go back. And since Judgment has a 30-yard range, you may have to run up, throw a Judgment, and then go back. But if you stay on your best buddy, the pillar, and you stay safe, you will win way more games. Healing efficiently and staying safe will take you so far in World of Warcraft this season. It's crazy. You don't have to do anything flashy. You don't have to make any risky plays. I could heal you right here, but I open myself up to all sorts of problems like Stormbolt, like getting feared, like getting Death Gripped in. So why would you heal here when you could have a line of sight advantage and you can choose when to expose yourself to those CCs? Let's say they have an enemy druid healing the team and he decides he wants to run through the melee cleave and try to get a CC on me with like a clone. So let's say he runs in and maybe right here, my Death Knight sees him running towards me and he pulls him in and my warrior stuns him and now he has to pop Tranquility just to survive. Whereas if that druid would have just stayed over there at that pillar and stayed safe, he would have had a higher chance of winning because now he gave Tranquility essentially for no reason. And you also fall behind on healing when you're running around. You don't use your globals efficiently. So there's no need to be running through midfield to try to make a flashy Hammer of Justice play. Also, let's say a warrior heroic leaps over here and he's ready to swap on me. Let's say he leaves in mid leap. While he lands, I hodge him, he trinkets, I run behind this pillar and he runs behind. I can blind him now and I can come back here and I can start healing my team still. And I have two choices. I could either deal with this warrior when he gets to me, or I could try to go to this pillar with mobility, thus lining the warrior and also being able to stay in line of my team. I can't stress this enough. Stay safe, stay 40-yard range, and you will improve your wild play significantly. And please do not let me catch you healing like right here. There is no need to be healing anybody in the middle of a map. This is what gets teams killed. I see so many healers in low elo. They'll run in the middle of the map and they'll be like frantically healing and they're like, they get kicked, they get feared, they get like swapped on. So please do not heal in the middle of the map. And if you're not gonna do the peak technique, at least start by standing by the pillar. And that's gonna wrap up basic positioning. If you have any advanced questions about positioning, maybe with like wizard cleaves or anything, please ask in the comments below. I will answer your question. I just can't go into a whole rant about positioning in this video since it's pretty long already, but this will be the positioning segment of the guide. So that was my Holy Pally guide. It was quite the ride. I'm really new to making videos like this, so I know there's a lot of improvements I can make. I'm not saying I'm the end-all be-all Pally by any means whatsoever. I'm just presenting the information I have and what I know about the game. If you guys have any questions for me, I will try my best to answer those. Just leave them in the comments down below. I also have an alt Paladin, so if you need a healer for 3s, you can hit me up. This is my battle tag. I do not care what CR you are at. I'll definitely play with you. It'll be a great time. Thank you so very much for watching. If you liked the video, please leave a like and subscribe. Until next time, take it easy.